it says where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Well, for me, it makes more sense if you kind of flip that around. Where your heart is, there your treasures will be.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Leadership 360. I hope you've enjoyed our full year so far. We're to our last episode number 10. And I'm excited to have Lynette Ecord, I'm going to get your title correct because it's quite lengthy, Director of Plan Giving and Trust Services, Stewardship Coordinator, and Secretary of the Texas Conference Association. Did I get it right?
You did.
Okay.
Very good.
So I'm excited you're here. This has been one of the episodes I've had circled on my calendar because you are all of these things, and yet a lot of people don't know about stewardship or plan giving or the role that the conference plays. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we do that, how in the world did you end up working at the Texas Conference?
Well, that's a good question. I actually am a Texas girl, born and raised in Dallas. Went to school at Valley Grande Academy. From there, I went to Southwestern, which at the time was Adventist college, I believe. Anyway, graduated from there. My first job after college was for a mortgage company in the loan closing department where all the legal documents are prepared.
Sure.
From there, I went and worked for attorneys for a while. And my dad had also, in my teenage years, my dad had gone into the ministry. So he worked for the conference. We were always, in church while I was growing up. Every time it was open, my family was very involved. And so at one point, I was told that there was an opening in the trust department or Southwest Estate Services at the union office. And so I applied for that job. And about 2 months after I started there, the Texas Conference voted to take all their trusts back to the Texas Conference. And so I followed those trusts here to Texas. That'll be 31 years in July.
Wow.
Since that happened. Been here ever since.
So growing up as a pastor's kid, which explains that I did not know that about you, so that explains a little bit. But did you ever think of yourself like, man, I'll work for the church one day?
No. No, I really didn't. And what happened was I had actually just had my second child, my second son, and was laid off the day I went back after maternity leave from my job. So I was at a women's ministries meeting at the Burleson Church and was sharing with them, what had happened and prayers, for finding something else. And someone who worked at the union at the time was there and mentioned this to me, that they had an opening there. And so, that's how I ended up applying for the job and going to work for the church.
Wow. And now 30 plus years later.
Yes.
So what is interesting is we're going to dissect your title because you've got a lot of stuff under your portfolio. Your department, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you have yourself. You have 3 associates.
I have 1 associate.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me because the titles are important.
I have 1 associate and 2 area coordinators.
Okay. So give them a shout out. Who's your associate in your
So our associate in the trust department is Pastor Uziel Maldonado.
Okay.
And he covers DFW and North Texas.
Okay.
And then we have Pastor Marshall Gonzalez, who covers Houston and East Texas.
Okay.
And then Pastor Tony Correa, who covers San Antonio and South Texas.
Gotcha. So you have representation, you have people in the field in those areas.
Yes.
So let's talk about, I'm going to start from the end of your title, Secretary of the Texas Conference Association. What in the world is the Texas Conference Association? Is it different than the Texas Conference? What is it?
It is. Much of what the denomination does is accomplished through its status as an unincorporated entity.
Okay.
So the conference is not a corporation. However, we also have a need to have a legal personality,
Okay.
if you will, along with, the privileges and responsibilities that come with that. So an associate or a corporation is the most common form of that legal responsibility.
Okay.
So in 1954, I believe it was, the Texas Conference applied with the Secretary of State to become a corporation. And the name of that is the Texas Conference Association of Seventh-day Adventists.
Okay.
And we have officers just like the conference has officers. However, this is the legal corporation. So our president, Elton DeMorris, is the president also of the association.
Okay.
And Elder Randy Terry and Elder David Montoya are vice presidents. And I'm actually the secretary treasurer.
Okay, gotcha. So on paper, it's two different, the Texas Conference of Seventh-day Adventists that we that we think about, and the Texas Conference Association of Seventh-day Adventists, two different things.
Correct.
But the reality is much of it overlaps. You said the officers are the same.
Yes, except that I'm not an officer of the
conference. So what are some of the necessities of that? Why do we need to be a legal entity, a corporation?
Okay. So the corporation separates out the ownership of things such as property, real estate, the trust, the managing and handling of estates through wills, where the secretary of the association is named as the executor of the will.
Gotcha.
The charitable gift annuities, we title our vehicles in the name of the association. The association is empowered by the constituency to enter into contracts and leases, borrow money, buy property, goods, and ownership without imposing personal liability on the individuals.
Gotcha.
Okay. So it's on the corporation.
So if it were just the Texas Conference and something went wrong, well, I'm not even sure we could hold property, but if there's some liability.
Correct. And so if for example, if the property titles were held in the name of the conference, it's more cumbersome to transfer title in and out of an unincorporated entity.
Okay.
Without a corporation, the owners of the entity
Right.
would probably have to take the vote to purchase or sell, to sign the individual contracts. And the owner, in our case, of the conference is every member of the conference.
Right.
It's the constituents.
Okay, gotcha.
Of course, we have the meetings where each church votes their delegates to attend our constituency meetings, but those only happen every 2 years. It's almost 1,600 people. So
Actually, 4 years now, thank goodness.
Yes. Did we vote to go?
We did vote that.
Okay.
Elder Montoya, in our first episode, we had that conversation.
Good. Great.
Every 4 years.
Okay, every
Sorry,
4 years. No, that's fine. So, you can just imagine with almost 1,600 delegates that attend that, how, the logistics of it, the cost of it, how long it would take us to just, be able to enter a contract.
Gotcha.
So.
And and this is not unique to Texas.
No, it's
every
not.
Conference in the division is
to my
structured
knowledge,
this way?
every conference in the division is still structured this way.
Or at least in the United States. I don't want to speak for Canada, Guam, or Bermuda.
Right.
I don't.
Correct. Yes.
So it becomes very important for us then to have this legal entity, again, for holding property and, transacting business. Like you said, we'll talk a little bit about trusts and all
protecting
that
the individuals
Gotcha.
from any liability.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's one and the same in terms of the same players.
Correct.
The constituents of the association are the same as the constituents of
that is correct.
conference.
And those constituents at those constituency meetings, those delegates elect the board of directors for the Texas Conference Association, so that board is the board that votes. We meet monthly.
Okay.
And we vote to purchase or sell or, whatever we need to do, take care of the legal business on that side of it.
So let's talk for a second about how this affects the local church, because, again, we're talking to leaders. Mm-hmm. Every church every school is owned by the Texas Conference Association of Seventh Adventists, correct?
Correct.
I hate to generalize, but I mean,
yeah, I won't call out any names.
Sure.
But occasionally, a group will, unfortunately, go out on their own and purchase property. Some of the issues with that are, for example, when it comes time to pay property taxes, and that might be when we find out what they've done, then all of a sudden they want to get it tax exempt because, it is a church property, but that can't happen. So then, yes, we'll go through the process of transferring the property. In most cases, we would accept that property to the conference.
Gotcha.
But there are other issues as well because, if it doesn't meet code for handicap, there's a lot of things that we try to vet property before it's purchased. So
gotcha.
It's important for a lot of reasons to do that.
So how much control does the conference association have over once we hold title? How much control then do you go in and tell them what to do? What is your relationship with the local church? Because the conference association owns the property. Do you get to go in there and say, this is what you do, or what's kind of that role once title comes to us?
No, we don't go in and tell them what to do with the property. They need to follow the codes of their local jurisdiction, wherever they're at, that kind of thing. When they get ready to sell it, of course, they'll want to work with us, but they can pick their own realtor. The church board will vote, or the church and business meeting would vote to sell it. They would send us their minutes, let us know, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's how much we'd like to list it for. We work together with them at their direction.
So to take it a step further, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I think these are important questions that I've heard over my time in ministry. Okay, so a church sells the building. Does the conference get to keep the money and say, okay, that's our building, so we get to keep the money? What happens to the money when a church gets
not
sold?
At all. So when the church gets sold, of course, it depends. If they're purchasing another building, normally they'll put that towards the new building. It may be held in a revolving fund account for them until they're ready to purchase a new building. If the church is dissolving, then they look at that on a case-by-case basis. If the majority are going to another church because it's too small or something like that, then they may just give those funds to that church. So try to put it back at least into the area where the church was.
So even though we own the building, own the church, there's autonomy. Again, there's certain requirements that need to be met, insurance and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. Yes.
But we're not micromanaging the church. I mean, how many? This is a totally random question. How many properties do we have in the Texas Conference?
I was afraid you were going to ask that.
Ballpark it, because it changes from.
I'm going to say probably 300. And that's just a ballpark figure. We actually have a property manager who takes care of that, but somewhere around 300.
So again, I mean, it's a vast portfolio of properties, and so the conference the association cannot micromanage. I mean, it's hard enough to keep up with one or two churches. We can't come in.
We don't do it, and we don't want to do it. No, don't have the time.
So there is practical reason why the title of the church is held in the conference association and not in the name of the local church.
Yes.
I appreciate you explaining that, because I know for a number of people that I've interacted, even me growing up in the church, it's like, okay, why this, why that? And that has been super helpful in helping to kind of unravel the mystery of the association. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about stewardship. Kind of changing gears a little. Often we think of stewardship just as money, and I know we'll talk about that in a second when it comes to trusts and your other part. But how do you see stewardship? What do you see as a definition of stewardship, and is it just money?
No, not at all. I like to think of stewardship as the act of living a grateful life. It's grateful living. Okay. And in fact, that's the theme that we've recently adopted is grateful living. It's all about relationship, like anything else in the church. It's about our relationship with God. Love for God and love for other people. And so as Christians, our gratefulness to God, we recognize that everything we have is because of Him.
Right.
Thanks to Him, we have what we need, and maybe even beyond. Most of us may not think we do in the U.S., but if you start looking around the world, you find out that you are very blessed. If we follow the principles of stewardship without understanding that it's about the relationship, or without having that relationship, I should say, then it's really for the wrong motive, and we're missing the point entirely.
So what I hear you saying is that stewardship is much more than me paying my tithes and offerings.
Absolutely.
So,
for example, God gave us our bodies. They're wonderfully, miraculously made. If you start looking at nature and how everything works together and everything follows the same clock, and it's just amazing. And He gave us those things. So because we're grateful for that, we want to take care of the bodies that He gave us. We want to exercise, try to get enough sleep, eat right, as well as we can.
All those things that many of us don't do, but yeah,
right.
You're right.
But there is a desire.
Sure.
And just like you want to take care of yourself for your spouse, if you're married.
Sure.
You don't enjoy that necessarily.
That's true.
But you do have a desire to want to be here for them, as long as your natural life. As long as you live, naturally, not expedite that process by not taking care of your body. So
really what I hear you saying is that stewardship, because it is grateful living, it really pervades my entire who I am and my life.
Correct.
That finances are a small part of that.
That's correct.
But it's a part of living that grateful life. I love that.
That's right.
I love that theme.
He gave us the whole world and dominion over it. So again, something else that if we love Him, if we're grateful for that gift, then we want to take care of that. He gave us special gifts and talents. All of us have different gifts and different talents. We can either choose to use those for His honor and glory because we love Him and we're grateful for that gift, or we can use them for our own gratification and glory. So, then of course, finances are a big part of it, but not all. Again, I'll add our testimonies. We all have a story to tell, a story of our journey with God.
Sure.
They're all different stories, but as we share how God has been there for us through these difficult times or different stages of our lives, we're grateful for Him being there for us, and we're encouraging others. That's another part of good stewardship.
So it puts stewardship in a very different light. It's not just, again, the financial part that we think of it, but it's really an outgrowth of my relationship with Jesus.
Correct. Matthew 6:21, it's no lie. It says where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Well, for me, it makes more sense if you kind of flip that around. Where your heart is, there your treasures will be. Well, so if you have that relationship, that's where you're going to invest your time, your money, your talents, your testimony.
It's funny. I tell people an awful lot when we talk about, grateful living and about priorities and all that. If you give me access to two pieces of information, I can tell where your heart is. And the two pieces of information are, give me access to your bank account. I used to say checkbook, but nobody knows what a checkbook is anymore. And to your calendar. Where are you spending your time? Where are you spending your energy? And I think when we realize that everything we do, and many times we as Christians and even as Seventh-day Adventists, we kind of compartmentalize. Okay, this is the spiritual me. And that's from sunset Friday to sunset Sabbath. Okay, I go do church and all that kind of stuff. But the rest of it's mine. This is a different, and we compartmentalize. This is my work life. This is my family life. This is my church life. This is, but what I hear you saying is it can't be compartmentalized because it's all a part of how God created us and what God has given us.
Exactly.
So what are some resources that you and your team offer to the conference at large to help them understand how to live gratefully and what that really looks like, because it's a different paradigm for many of us.
Right. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have the three pastors who are responsible for the different areas of the conference. They're available for preaching, on Sabbath mornings, for doing some mini week of prayers on stewardship, family finances. And again, when I say on stewardship, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about the whole picture. So don't be confused by that. They can do seminars. Last fall, we teamed with the Treasury Department and the auditing team, and we held the first spiritual retreat for treasurers and stewardship leaders at Lake Whitney Ranch over 2 weekends, one in English and one in Spanish. And we had some very inspiring spiritual speakers there, but we also did trainings from people from the GC, the union, who came in and trained our local leaders in stewardship and treasury on that side. But we're planning another one, not for a whole weekend, but it will be in Houston in the fall, and that's open to everyone. There are weekly offering graphics that we provide for the churches that we put on our social media, but they can use them, during their offering time. Of course, we share the materials that are available through the North American Division, the offering calls or stories, appeals, if you want to use those. We are actually working on preparing our own for next year.
Oh, really?
At least for the weeks where it's for local giving, local church giving, or the Texas Vision. To stories that are from here.
Oh, wow.
So we really hope to get that accomplished for next year. We have a website, texasgiving.org. And on that website, there's a tab that says resources, and there are just numerous resources available there. So also, the North American Division has started issuing publishing the Stew Pot that for many years was published by the Pacific Union.
Right. I remember that.
Yes, and the gentleman that did that retired, and so the NAD has now taken that over after a couple of years of absence. So we pass that on to the stewardship leaders. They publish it every other month, and we're constantly working to try to think of ways to help the churches train and educate their people on what stewardship is. Sure. We have some things for the children. We've partnered with our club ministries by offering free honors patches if they will teach the honors class on stewardship.
Oh, wow.
Pathfinders and Adventurers have 2 separate ones, and we have patches available on a first-come, first-served basis for those. We also just finished designing a new kids' tithe envelope that we're going to send out to the local churches in hopes that they'll use that, and the parents can use it. The club ministries, again, can use it to help train the kids on tithe and offerings and what that means. We have some age-appropriate books that we give to children who are 14 and under who are baptized. Oh. And those books, again, are a theme of stewardship, but they're stories. That teach about a life of stewardship. So those are some of the things we have going on now.
That's a lot of stuff. Wow. I knew about many of those, but not all. I love the children's tithe envelopes.
Yes.
Because really, that's where you start training your kids.
Exactly. Yes.
From little up when they get their allowance or whatever mom and dad do.
10 dimes, one for
Yeah,
Jesus.
I love that. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So what are some resources? We talked about planned giving. Mm-hmm. What does that mean, and what does that look like in terms of what the conference does in terms of
it's just a part of stewardship.
Okay.
It really is. I would call it the final or crowning act of stewardship.
Okay.
Again, acknowledging that everything we have comes from God. When we're finished with We can't take it to the grave with us.
True.
So again, as Christians, it only seems natural that you would want to continue to support the ministries that are dear to your heart in some way,
Sure.
or to fulfill the gospel commission. So this is a service that's been offered here in Texas. It started in the 1960s. I'm not sure. I think the other conferences adopted it at different times, but it's now all across the NAD and in several other divisions. And what we offer wills, trust agreements, charitable gift annuities, powers of attorney are part of that, and guardianships for adults.
Okay.
For those members who want to include the Lord's work in their distribution, currently the policy says, a minimum of 10% for a will. And that's, of course, after all expenses and things are paid.
Sure.
It's what it's left from that. But I've been doing this for 31 years now, right at 31 years, and I've seen a lot of blessings come from that. So
local church. So what you're saying is that the Texas Conference, Plan Giving Department, Stewardship Department, will do my will. I come to you and say, hey, here we are. I'd like to do a will. My wife and I have done a will when we started to have kids. It's, a lot of people don't like to think about it because it's a little morbid to think about, okay, what happens if I get, if I lose my life or my spouse loses or both. But what you're saying is that you guys will, from start to finish, do a will. The lawyers make it legal, all of that kind of stuff, as they remember, 10% for the Lord's work.
Correct. Yes.
How? Wow. What a story. I mean, wills in the real world, if you go to an attorney, can cost a significant amount of money.
Yes.
And this is a service that your department offers to our members for, like I said, for free, really. Free. I mean, it's I don't even put that 10% in there, but it's really for free.
Yes.
So if I'm sitting there saying, man, I put off, doing a will, but now I'm listening to this podcast and wow, I didn't know the conference did that. What do they have to do to get access to that?
So all they need to do is just contact us, send us an email or contact us through the website. When our pastors, I'm not a pastor. We talked about gifts. That's not one of my gifts. I don't preach. But when they go out and speak at churches or do a presentation of some type, they'll hand out interest cards. So if you happen to go to one of those, fill out the card or just let them know, hey, I'm interested in the will. Can you help me? And we'll hook you up with the trust officer in that area, and they'll be happy to help you. We have an agreement with a Seventh-day Adventist attorney here in Texas. Like I said, I started 31 years ago. He's been doing it for over 40 years. He's been working with the Southwestern Union and the Texas Conference. So while we actually draft the documents ourselves, he reviews them. Right. And they have his name on them. They're his documents. So because he's an Adventist, he gives us a reduced fee, and a much reduced fee, and we're doing part of the work. He's taking on the liability, but he considers that to be part of his gift to the Lord's work. So,
gotcha. Yeah. So even in that offering that service, that's part of grateful living on his part.
Absolutely.
In using his gifts to help people.
Yes.
Talk about a little bit, you talked about trusts and all that kind of stuff. So will it basically, and I'm going to give you a lay, I'm not an attorney by any stretch of the imagination. So will is what happens to my estate or my stuff when I die, who it goes to, all that kind of stuff. That gets done, by an executor. Correct. But what is the difference between a will and a trust?
Okay. So basically a trust the purpose of a trust is to avoid probate.
Okay.
So with a will, or if you die without a will, because the state of Texas does have a will for those who die without a will, they have it in the probate code, how your estate will be distributed. So that has to go through the probate court. You have to hire an attorney to do that, go before the judge, get your papers. You have to present accountings and different things to the court as you go along. So it takes, some more time, and it takes money to do that. So a lot of people want to avoid all that, and they'll say, I want to set up a trust.
Okay.
What happens with this trust is that you transfer your assets to the trust. If it's a self-managed trust, you're the trustees of that trust, so you still retain control.
Okay, right.
If it's a revocable trust, which 99% of ours are, then you can, as long as you keep that up, as far as keeping it current with the assets being titled to the trust, then when you both pass away, the assets will transfer to the person you name as your successor trustee,
Gotcha.
who is basically like an executor, because their responsibility is to collect those assets. All they need to do is show a death certificate, and a check will be written to them, to the trust for that. They can pay all your final expenses and distribute the money, as you direct in the trust. It's not as beneficial as it used to be in Texas, because we can now set up all of our assets to transfer on death without having to go through the will. There is now in Texas what's called a transfer on death deed. And prior to about 3 or 4 years ago, we did not have that. So there was no way to transfer your real property without having to go through probate.
Gotcha.
Outside of a trust.
Gotcha.
So,
wow. Yeah. So what are you? The other thing I want to hit, and our time is running out. I could because a lot of this is education for me, even though I've been around the church my entire life. So talk about what trusts, wills. Use the word annuity.
Okay, a charitable gift annuity.
Okay, there you go. Thank you for
because a lot of people are familiar with insurance, commercial insurance annuities. So a charitable gift annuity is where you say while you're living, or you could set one up to be established when you die, but most of the time it's while you're living, because you donate, a certain amount of money to the entity that you choose, and for whatever areas of ministry that you choose, and that money is used to fund the charitable gift annuity. And with that annuity, you get quarterly payments for the rest of your life, regardless of how long you live. If it's a 2-person annuity, you and your wife, then it's the survivor. However long the two of you are living, you get a higher rate of interest the older you are. You get a income tax, a charitable deduction.
Oh, really?
When you make the gift, the year you make the gift, or you can spread it out over up to 5 years. So you can use that for tax purposes, and a portion of the annuity payments are also tax-free. You're going to get a higher rate with a charitable gift annuity than with a commercial annuity, because it is a charitable gift, and it is an irrevocable gift.
Gotcha.
So you've made the gift, you've got your tax deductions, you're going to get some payments from it for as long as you live, but you can't take the principal back out.
Oh man, let me. No. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
So we've covered a lot of ground, and I know for some of our listeners, it may be the first time they've really kind of delved into, wills, trusts, all that kind of stuff. So if they want more information, like, man, would I do a will? Would I do a trust? Would I do a charitable gift annuity? Reach out to your office, go through the website, texasgiving.org, or?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Either way, texasgiving.org, again, there's a lot of information on there about what to give, ways to give, which talks about the wills, trust, charitable gift annuities. And of course, just contact us and we'll be happy to meet with you or answer questions.
Gotcha. So I want to hit, before we close, I want to hit the famous lightning round. You knew some of the topics we were going to talk about before. This you had no clue.
That's right.
So she's nervous but willing. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through this. Number 1, beach or mountains?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think mountains.
Mountains. Any particular part, like any place that you go, man, that's my go-to place for mountains?
No, I mean, we've spent a lot of time in Colorado.
Okay.
And yeah, that's nice. I just like the cooler weather, you know.
Wait a minute,
So,
you're a native Texan.
I know,
Wait a
I
minute.
know. And chose not to leave. So, but I love to hear the ocean waves. That's relaxing and peaceful. But boy, that sun, I can only take so much of that.
All right, gotcha. All right, number 2, most used app on your phone.
Ooh, ouch. Do I have to really say that?
Yeah.
All right.
Nobody's going to judge. It's a non-judgmental.
I have to admit it. It's Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Facebook.
You and millions and millions and millions and millions of other people.
I'm praying about it.
Number 3, favorite hobby outside of ministry.
Gardening, and I don't mean vegetable gardening.
Okay.
I love to work outside in my flowers and my shrubs and landscaping, kind of things like that. Yeah, I really enjoy that.
So you guys have some property, I think.
We have 4.5 acres.
4.5 acres, which is here in Texas now. It's property. If I remember right, you guys have chickens too, right?
No, actually, my brother and sister-in-law
okay.
have chickens. We own part of them as well.
Oh.
It's a group effort, but they're on their property. Yeah. Then they live right around the corner from us.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Because I know that you're constantly bringing eggs to the office, and
Yes.
those are homegrown, not from Kroger eggs.
Correct.
That
Home dropped. Yes.
That's right. I like that. I like that. One thing on your bucket list.
Oh, one thing on my bucket list. I want to go to Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list.
Do you have anything in plan to go? You and Tim?
We had a cruise planned actually in 2020.
Oh, of course.
For a significant anniversary, and then so you know the rest of the story there. And now we're looking at retirement, and do I want to spend money for that or not? I don't know, but that's definitely on my bucket list. Even if we end up driving there in retirement instead of cruising. So. Yeah.
I've heard it's beautiful. I've never been there. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Flying.
Flying.
Yeah.
You just want to get places.
Just the freedom to fly.
Okay.
I do have a need for speed. I have been known to drive a little too fast, and
wow, it's all coming out on here, man.
Yeah, when I was much younger and not as smart, maybe. I used to like to ride motorcycle, and
Wow. I would not have guessed that you were a biker chick.
My dad actually was a pilot. He got his pilot's license at Southwestern when he went to school there, and he had his own little airplane, and so I grew up flying with him. And he used to say when we were driving, "I'd rather be flying."
Sure.
I'm like, yeah. I mean,
and you had no interest in getting a pilot's license.
I never thought about it. I don't know why. I guess I knew I couldn't afford it.
Yeah, there.
My dad did that before he went into the ministry.
There it is.
When he went into the ministry, he sold his airplane to pay for my tuition at Valley Grande Academy. Yeah.
That's dedication.
Yes.
That is dedication. Last question. What piece of advice have you received that's the best piece of advice ever?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my head, it may not be the correct answer, but I remember my dad telling me that love. I had brought a young man home, to meet the parents, and super nice guy, and I mean, very attentive and thoughtful, but I just didn't. My dad asked about him. I said, I just don't love him. I can't. And he said, love is a commitment. And at the time, I thought, that's crazy. I don't. If I don't feel it, and obviously there needs to be some of that there too. But love is definitely a commitment. I have learned through the years, as situations come up and the ebbs and flows through life, sometimes it's just commitment, but it comes back around, and it comes back around stronger. So I think that was pretty good advice.
That is pretty good advice. I love that. Lynette, you made it.
Man.
This has been great. I've enjoyed this. We got in the weeds with some stuff, but we also got a chance to get to know you a little bit more. But also we get a chance to see what you and your team here at the conference office can offer our church members throughout the conference. And I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you guys have that theme of grateful living.
Yes.
That I think that really sets stewardship and really the paradigm that we want to have that's biblical for our conference and for our lives as Christians. So
thank you for the invitation.
That. Yes. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the last episode of 2024. We're going to take a 2-month break, but we'll be back in January of 2025 for more Leadership 360. Again, get it where you are listening to this, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you get it, but also watch it on YouTube at Texas Adventist. If you're just new to us, catch up on some episodes before we launch again in 2025. But thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.